Like a mirage in Southern Sudan, a single barge carries hope and renewal. It's still a shaky peace. Even so, for the people who fled the war, it's time to end decades of fear by reclaiming their home. For years, the White Nile has served only to take people away from here. But now the river is bringing them back. As many as 4.5 million may want to come home. Sudan is the biggest country in Africa, and it's riddled with complex conflicts. The most bloody being the genocide in Darfur. Here in the south, the picture is more positive. A 20-year war of independence fought by non-Muslims rebelling against the Islamic North is over. The peace deal gives the South more autonomy and promises a share of oil wealth.
I want a Sudan that is an open society, a democratic society, a pluralistic society. It will not be for dominance of one group over another.
In the crumbling southern capital of Juba, Dr. Machar heads the new southern government. There's been war here, off and on for more than 50 years. And it shows.
At times, one feels like flattening the whole place and rebuilding it from anew.
More than a year after the peace agreement, development is still choked by dust and delays. Southern Sudan's likely to face the biggest influx of people in the world this year. Most of the money promised from the north has not arrived. Yet, ready or not, the people are coming anyway.
They're our people. They have a right to be here. Since there is peace in Southern Sudan, they want to come back. So we have no choice to say we want X or not. It's their home.
In a dramatic sign of revival, the people of the Boer Dinka tribe and their cattle are on the move. Ahead lies a 3-week trek along the banks of the Nile. While the men are skirting the minefields, women, children and the aged endure a wretched resettlement camp where the temperatures are crippling 45 degrees. Most of the women have been refugees in their own country for 16 years or more. All have lost something that can never be regained. Martha A.N. and 4,500 others have been waiting at Lologo camp for 2 months. Shelters are crowded and people have only a little food from the UN and aid agencies. Most of the children have been born on the run. This baby was released from hospital because there was no medicine. Her mother can only hope and pray that she will survive. Martha and her children will be on the next boat, but she's uncertain what she'll find.
ai ba umma go pial ku ba cham runga la tem bakan yin piat yo moto to pe jen jal hunde jal yo ku jal ni ku mutsu le yo wen ku nyale.
In Juba, the southern flag still flies in the face of unity with the north. Last July, former rebel leader John Garang was killed in a mysterious helicopter crash. Suspicion that he was murdered almost restarted the war. Even now, neither side has put down its guns. The former rebels of the Sudan People's Liberation Army are more than willing to roll out their tanks for us. Under the peace deal, the former rebel army and government forces are meant over time to unite. Outside the rebel barracks, northern government soldiers put on a show of their own.
There are struggles. People who have been enemies, who met only in the battlefields or in forums negotiating bitterly, working together. It's not easy, it takes time.
Spend just a little time in the south and you feel the conflicting currents. Optimism for building a new life, including schools, roads, hospitals, and a sense of community. If the south could get a fair share of the oil wealth, it could be an African success story. But the former rebel leaders who run Southern Sudan know that the future is not in their hands alone. The hardline Islamic government to the north still holds the power.
In Sudan, wealth has always flowed north with the Nile. For centuries, the Arabs of the north have raided the fertile south for slaves, ivory, and more recently, oil. At the confluence of the Blue and White Nile rivers lies the result of those riches, Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Southerners resent Khartoum. It represents Muslim control and increasing northern wealth. Libya, seeking influence here, is building this luxury hotel. And the venue for the recent African Union summit was built by the Chinese, who are driving the oil industry. The summit brought together a few democrats and rather too many despots. Among them, Sudan's President, Field Marshal Omar al-Bashir.
تلك الحرب اللعينة التي أفقدت السودان طاقات بشرية واعدة.
President al-Bashir promised to maintain the peace, but Southerners who've borne years of northern oppression remain suspicious. For the past few decades, many have lived in camps for displaced people around Khartoum. They've been forced to follow strict Sharia law, and the Islamic government is intolerant of Christians and non-believers. Many Arabs still call blacks abid or slaves.
Wole wadi wala jabodin. Wala jabodin. La be kalma gale ita jadu munu jan. Ma ita ab jadu. Kan tamandi giriti tabe mut bara le kepa.
A few hours from Khartoum, Kosti is the departure point for southerners heading home. For more than 30 years, Eliza Ware and Abram Machik squatted in the capital. There, they say, they were treated like animals.
Arab dayini kaman shokol biga mafi yala ini waleta kurdi waleda ita bes tagani itap kesa bes de dugoita be kututa segin be sota sunu be garamita nama na taban asa jolja sa mundun hajata taakul.
Like most returnees, Eliza and Abram want to find the home and family they left decades ago, and they want a future.
تمشي تزرع زراعة بتاعك ما في تمشي محل البقر تمشي تشرب اللبن بمجان سمك بمجان المانجا بمجان جوافة قريد أي حاجة تفاح ما شاء الله بلدنا يعني كل شيء.
Families are so desperate to move south that they camp at Kosti for weeks, even months, waiting for a barge.
They come here with many hopes, or let me say great expectations that they will find back in South.
Dr. Francis Alcobo from the Federation for African Relief tries to keep them fit for the journey ahead.
4 months old killed, suffering from fever, diagnosed as has malaria. But her mother is now outside the wharf because she is going to find a food for these kids and for her family.
Dr. Alcobo is a southerner too, but his family has split.
The rest of my brothers in Sydney, Australia, they are with you. They are there in Sydney, in Melbourne, also scattered there.
Even so, he plans to return south alone.
I can say I can go back to save my people, to save my lands, to see what's left for us there as a new generation.
While many wait for river transport, we bypass the ancient barges and take the road. At the town of Renk, we cross the boundary between north and south. To a degree, the war was a religious conflict. Southerners who follow Christian and tribal faiths rebelled against the national Islamic government. Bishop Daniel Deng Bull is building a new Anglican cathedral to accommodate his growing congregation.
It is a buffer zone between the two religions, in Islam and Christianity. They meet here, and they are struggling for their own propagation.
Do you see this as a battle between Christianity and Islam?
We are not fighting against in Islam. We are just trying to win people to Christ. So we are not fighting them. And they are also struggling to win people to Muhammad.
The bishop's been a long-time critic of the government, and that hasn't changed with the end of the war.
It is actually the government in the north, because they politicize the Islamization. The government in the north made it as a point that you have to be forced to become a Muslim. So when you try to force a religion on people, I don't think that it will be acceptable to anybody without accepting it by heart.
Religion is not the only issue creating continuing tension. The other is the exploitation of oil and gas.
People are quite suspicious in the south, and the government should do more to take away that suspicion, because one of the important agreement was that 50% of the oil income and the oil resources would go to the south.
Khartoum vows that it is already paying its half share of oil revenue under the peace deal. The Southern Sudan government rejects the claim.
Well, oil is key. It's key because it is the major resource of the whole Sudan now for getting revenue. So it is key, yes.
Well, how much revenue have you had?
Very little.
The North-South talks.
The UN's Jan Pronk says the reason for the confusion is an utter lack of transparency on the part of the national government.
Firstly, nobody knows exactly how much oil has been produced last year. There's no agreement on the price per barrel. Now, if you don't know the quantity and the price, you don't know the income, and you don't know what 50% is.
Bishop Daniel Deng Bull says the national government's colluding with foreign oil companies to the detriment of its own people.
This village is called Paloch. Paloch is one of the some of the villages which has been destroyed when the company came to take away the people. And the security wanted to take them away by force. But you could see around here so many installations of the oil field. So there are wells inside the town here. And they want these people to go away, but they are saying we cannot go away without building another village for us, a nice one.
Villagers have been ordered to vacate the land so that a company jointly owned by the Khartoum government and a Chinese firm can drill for oil. Community leader James Malou returned to Paloch only a year ago, just after the peace deal was signed.
These people should be given compensation by the company. And if that thing is done, that's what we want. But if they just remove them without compensation, that is very terrible, and that shows that there is no justice in the Sudan to our people.
For many Southern Sudanese, justice means compensation, oil money to build better homes, and ultimately a new society. At Mellish, where the road south ends, we take to the Nile to continue our journey. It looks like a tropical paradise, but in truth it's one of the least developed places on the globe. Malaria and waterborne diseases are rife here. There are virtually no schools or hospitals, and in these most fertile of lands, people are going hungry. From the port of Malakal, the United Nations World Food Programme conducts a massive feeding operation on the water. Already at least 2 million Southerners are entirely dependent on food aid. The South remains a test case for peace in Sudan, and these early returnees will be testing the water too as they board the first barges home. Under the peace deal, they can choose to separate from the North at a referendum. But that could lead to a new war over southern oil.
People need to understand that they have a future. And if they don't have a future, 6 years from now, when there is a referendum, people will vote against unity. And then you get, I am afraid, again, a war.
As they finally board the barge home, returnees like Martha Ayen want to believe.
Are you ready for your journey? Yes.
Martha knows that peace can't be guaranteed. Militias, some armed by the Khartoum government, are still creating terror in parts of the south. This is where Martha Ayen wants to return, the Dinka homeland around Bor. Here, armed conflict has, for now, been replaced by fighting for fun in the form of traditional wrestling. This is community entertainment, like it was before the war. It's been a 40-hour journey along the Nile from Juba to Bor. For Martha Ayen, it's the final leg of a 16-year quest to get home. It would take many hundreds of barges to carry all the Dinka who may want to return. All of these families will be starting again with nothing, yet they do it with joy and hope.